Hello and welcome to episode 92 of our SAP on Azure video podcast. Today is May 12th and together with Robert and Goran, we're here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello everyone.
Hi.
So today we want to talk about data again. In the past, we had already talked about extracting data from your SAP system to Azure using Azure Data Factory and other tools, and then visualizing the data in Power BI, for example. There is, however, a challenge with doing that. And because once the data is in Power BI, for example, you might have lost the context. You don't know where the data is coming from and all these kind of things. So that's where Purview comes in and helps you to see the lineage of the data. And today we have Martin Pankraz again with us, together with Chandra. He's going to show us what Purview is, what you can do with this, and show us some live demos on this. But before we hand over to them, let's quickly take a look at some of the news from this week. And I actually want to start with Sapphire. So I'm actually in a hotel room in Orlando right now. I just attended Sapphire. Today is the last day. And it was a very interesting show because it was the first time in, 2 years, that Sapphire was on site again. It was very interesting. We had a few keynotes from Christian Klein, obviously from Julia White, talking about SAP. There's this new slogan that's about the intelligent, networked, and sustainability enterprise. So I think that was one thing that was going throughout the whole keynote, throughout multiple sessions that I was able to attend. So it was a very, interesting setting this stage, basically. I think the Sapphire this year is much smaller, less customers, less partners there, but there are some really interesting sessions presented by SAP and customers. And along with this, I think similar like what they did during the virtual events, there's now this news guide, and it basically talks about all the things that were mentioned. And actually, this is really helpful because when you are on the show floor, you don't realize how many things were announced or all the things that they were talking about. So I didn't have yet time to really go through the details here, but obviously there are topics like the networking scenario. Cantina X was one of the topics they talked about. Sustainability is there everywhere. BTP, the business technology platform, has this is actually about RISE. So obviously RISE was there mentioned several times. The whole low-code area is something that is very prominent with AppGyver, the SAP process automation, with Signavio. There are a lot of things. So I need to take a closer look at all these announcements, but it was so far quite interesting.
So no hyperscaler roundtables like last week at DSAG.
No, and that's also actually a very interesting thing. So if you compare it to DSAG, for example, what I found really interesting is that the keynote was much smaller, which was, I don't know why actually. So for an on-site event, I think it wasn't very well done because a lot of people needed to stand. I'm not sure why they did it. And the other thing is when you look at the hyperscalers, SAP clearly wants hyperscalers to be limited to the infrastructure providers. So we have our booth, and we have a fairly limited booth, I would say, similar like AWS and GCP. We're all lined up, but it's just the infrastructure, which I find a little unfortunate because I think, especially when you look at what we are doing from a Microsoft side, we're clearly not only a hyperscale provider, an infrastructure provider. We are doing much more, but I think SAP wanted to have all the hyperscalers as just, look, these are 3 components that we leverage to run our business. Where I think even if you look at GCP and AWS, they are also doing much more than infrastructure. So yeah, that's how it is. But in order to show you that we are doing much more than infrastructure, we've also actually released a blog post on the tech community. So this SAP on Azure product announcement summary for Sapphire 2022. And there we start with an infrastructure play. So NBA is a RISE customer. So they are using SAP's RISE offering, and they selected Azure as the hyperscaler. But they are also doing much more on top of the infrastructure. And if you look at some of the things that we're doing in this area, I mean, here's a list of a lot of announcements that have been made throughout the last month, I think. So when we talk about the DMO to Azure, helping customers to migrate, or actually let me scroll down here because there's some more details where we start with the infrastructure. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think this is the first time that we really talk also about our 24 terabyte virtual machines in the context of SAP. So obviously we all know, I mean, we here in the podcast know that this has been going on for quite some time now, that we have some customers really using 24 terabytes memory virtual machines with SAP already. So this was one of the announcements. But then if we scroll down and take a look at the other things that we are now talking or announcing, this new framework that summarizes a lot of capabilities like the deployment automation framework, Azure Monitor for SAP, Azure Backup for SAP, the cost management, Microsoft Sentinel that we recently also talked about. So I think this already clearly shows that it's not only an infrastructure play. We're not only providing a virtual machine, we're really providing a lot of more things. And these are things that help customers run their SAP system, or in this case here with the deployment automation framework, deploy the SAP system. But then there's so many things that you can do on top. Yeah, we talked about the SAP Cloud Appliance Library, about the productive deployment, the Azure Monitor. So there's really Microsoft Sentinel, the Lemongrass as one partner that we're working with, the ILM connector for Azure Blob Storage. One of your favorite topic, Martin, the SAP private link for Azure, the connectivity with the business technology platform. And look here, we're already talking about Azure Purview here. There's one announcement there that we'll pick on in a second. So it's really a lot of content that we have also released on the Microsoft side. Good. With this one last thing, we have been talking about OData for a long time. And Martin, you had the session with Will, where we talked about how you can expose an OData service and convert it using your converter in an open API specification. And then we can take it into, for example, Azure API management, and from there in the Power Platform. But I think sometimes it's good to take a step back and look, well, actually, what is OData? And SAP, DJ Adams from SAP, I think is making another hands-on SAP dev session that talks about OData, which I think, I mean, obviously I've not seen it yet. It's only live in 19 hours, but knowing DJ and also knowing what he has done in the past, I'm sure this will be a very interesting session that talks about OData again, the idea about OData and how you can work with OData services. Okay, so with this, that was a long intro, actually. What I would like to do is hand over to Chandra and you, Martin. Maybe you can quickly introduce yourself, and then I'm really looking forward to seeing Purview in action, I would say.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chandra Mohan. I work in the Fast Track for Azure team. I'm based in Dubai, and I mainly work on analytics workloads, and Purview being one of them. Happy to be here.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Martin, direct colleague of Holger's. I've been on the show a couple of times, and excited to be here with Chandra today. So I'm focusing on the product development, more or less, for SAP and Microsoft, and the data part being one of the topics that's being looked at there, and Chandra bringing the customer expertise really, from direct project engagements, where that's where we meet up for such topics. It's always great to find counterparts within Microsoft who are as eager and as well bringing the real hands-on expertise to these topics.
Perfect.
All right, so the basis for today's session is again a blog post that Chandra and I have been writing together and posting on the SAP community. And you will find everything that we do in this space on our aggregator link gallery. Yeah? And this one, for instance, here is the topic for today. So it will be linked on the video afterwards, right? And I will go from here directly into the demo we want to show today. And basically, for that, I'm going to navigate to a dashboard like you would do in a typical life of someone in the sales department, looking at your SAP sales data. Yeah. So this is bringing up my dashboard. And in here, showing me insights into my business, yeah, in a certain way. So this is just one example of how customers would look at it from a conceptual way, yeah, even though the visualization could look different depending on your exact use case and how the company likes it. Yeah. So, but how can you now know how trustworthy this data is? Yeah?
Exactly.
At least, yeah. Some companies at least want to see what's the latest loading date, but even then, how can I tell where this came from, how it was processed, curated? How do I know how trustworthy this data is? And it's one of the challenges that you might see as a company. Yeah? And the first thing, for instance, would be I'm based out of Azure, for instance, and I'm looking at this dashboard, and I shouldn't be seeing any data from EMEA. That's one of the use cases. Yeah? And how can I make sure that's actually true, yeah, without filtering and checking anything in here? Yeah? And that's like one of the major topics that you have in the space. Do you want to pick it up from here, Chandra, on the
Sure. So yeah, what you mentioned was one of the problems that we can solve using Azure. But taking a step using Microsoft Purview, but taking a step back, I was probably thinking about what are the common things that any chief data officer would be thinking about. For example, how can I know, what is the insights about my data estate for a given enterprise? For example, what data does my enterprise have? That could be one of the questions. And the other thing is, how can I get a bird's eye view of my entire, real estate that I have? And once I get that, how can I find out what kind of sensitive data is being stored there? And the other thing I also want to know, and like what you mentioned, is one of the other use cases is know where the data is moving, how the data is moving, starting from its origin to the destination, and then track back lineage and understand if this data is trustworthy, if this data is correct, if this data is curated in the proper way, and things around what happened with this piece of data before I'm seeing it on my Power BI screen. So those are challenges which you would think about when you're putting yourself into the shoes of somebody that takes care of the entire data real estate. Now, there are also other challenges as a data producer. For example, I may be inputting data, a lot of data that is coming into a particular system like SAP. So those are data discovery challenges that a data producer may have. And likewise, a person who's looking for data, for example, I may be a developer that is tasked with creating a dashboard, and I need to know where that data for that dashboard is going to come from. Whom should I contact within an organization? And even if I contact a person, am I sure that I will be seeing the correct information from them? And what are the security concerns, or how can I get access to that piece of data even if I find out that one? So all that information or all that kind of questions are somehow answered using Microsoft Purview, which is more or less, we can call that as a unified governance platform where you can manage your data estate. It can be either on-prem, it can be on Azure, it can be on a different cloud, or it can be a SaaS platform. So we have connectors for various things, which I think we will see that during the demo. And so, yeah, once I have access to these on-prem or access to these environments, I can then create a data map. And then on top of that data map, I create what is called as a data catalog, which then becomes an area where all these problems that I described about Do I know what data I have? Do I know sensitive, if there is sensitive data? Do I know how the data is moving? For a data consumer, do I know how to look for the data I'm looking for? How can I ask for access for a particular piece of data? All this comes somehow merged into this particular location called as the Azure Purview portal that you're seeing now.
Chandra, quick question on this. Since we started with Power BI, and obviously Power BI is an end user tool that I as the end user use. But Purview, is Purview also for the end user, or Purview is probably more for the, yeah, maybe administrator or power end user or something like that, who has a little more insights, who does the work on the ETL process and stuff like that, right?
It could be for both of them, and I can. There are different personas that can use the portal, as you see here. It could be like, for example, as an end user, as a Power BI dashboard creation developer, for example. I may want to, as I said in the previous quick chat, I was saying that, well, I don't know where this particular piece of data is in the enterprise, and how can I search for it, right?
Okay.
So as a developer, I have access to this portal here. I can quickly come here and look for sales data, for example, or marketing information or finance information. And then it is going to show me a list of assets that it knows about when it comes to sales or marketing or finance. And out of that, I can do some amount of filtering because it is created in what we call as collections. And based on the hierarchy that is there, I can potentially narrow down further to the data set that I'm looking for, and then ask for access for that data set. So that is from a developer perspective. And from an admin perspective, for example, I'm taking care of scanning all the data sets, for example, SAP being one of them. Then I sit along with the SAP administrator, here Martin in this case, and then I tell him that, well, hey, I want to scan the SAP BW, and could you help me with that? And Martin would come back and say, hey, we need some more information on what exactly do you want to scan on SAP, and basically have a dialogue back and forth, and then we find out what exactly are the tables and views that we want to scan from SAP. We set up a scan, and then we ingest that metadata information coming from SAP into Azure Purview, into Microsoft Purview. I keep calling it Azure Purview because recently it got changed into Microsoft Purview.
No, but Chandra, I think that was really, really interesting for me, because what you just said is, if I'm the Power BI administrator, or the one who creates the dashboards, and I'm happy with building beautiful user interface and stuff like that, but now I want to explore and find new data, basically. And what you're saying is, since, for example, Martin has already done all the scanning, because there was an initial request, I can now look at the results of this scan. So I can browse and walk through all the dependencies, and maybe then that's where I find some additional really cool data sources that I wasn't aware of before. And then I can say, oh, this is great. I also want to build a Power BI dashboard on top of this, or something like that. But I can use Purview also as an exploration tool or something like that. So Martin has done already the work. He has connected lots of data sources, and now I, as not the SAP expert anymore, but I'm the Power BI expert, I can now use Purview to also discover and explore what is cool. Okay.
So maybe let's use that as the opportunity to look at what we have in our data estate here. No?
Yeah. So what you see there on the top is what we call as a root level collection, the FTA lab Purview. And that comes created. We don't have to create that. As soon as we deploy an Azure Purview account, Microsoft Purview account, that gets pre-created for us. And underneath that, we created another collection called the Contoso collection, and that's the name of the company in this case. And underneath that, we have registered all the sources. Now, we have also created or registered a few collections or a few data sources under the root collection itself, which is probably not a very good practice, but then that's fine for a demo environment. But typically, yeah, as you can see, we have named a company Contoso, and under that, we have a lot of SAP sources, and we also have some data lakes as well registered, right? So that's the first step. That is, create your organizational hierarchy based on whatever approach that you would like to take. There is no right or wrong approach in that, but we do have some best practices. And once you have created your hierarchy and you have registered your data sources, you then set up a scan by clicking on the scan icon. Martin, do you want to? Yeah. There we go. So in the scan, you're going to tell Purview that we want to scan a specific data source, in this case SAP. And so Martin, you probably are better off explaining the details on the parameters we are supplying here.
So the scan is specific to your target. Yeah. So since I clicked the BW, I think it was, it's bringing the specialized screen for that. Yeah. And since Chandra said this is hyperscaler agnostic, could also be on premises or on Azure. We have this integration runtime, which gets you connectivity in a secure way, as well as the execution environment to actually be able to consume the SAP as a system as a source. And so you will find stuff like the client ID, which is meaningful to the SAP-based statement, which client am I scanning, and the JCO for the technical connectivity. Yeah. But all of this is described in detail in the documentation for SAP system scans for Purview. And I would only make a comment here on the maximum memory. This one needs to be quite large for initial SAP scans. So the documentation today says 128 gigabyte memory. So that's something to watch out for. Yeah. So if you make this too small, it will run very long or not finish at all.
but
yeah, you will.
We just talked about the 24 terabyte memory virtual machines that we have on Azure. So I think we should be fine.
And
in my experience,
from which context is maximum memory? So throughput context or memory for analyzing that data? What is memory in this context?
So there are a couple of things that happen on that self-hosted integration runtime. Number one is we are connecting to the source system. We are asking SAP to provide the data. And then once we get the data, we are now processing that information within the self-hosted integration runtime. And the processed data is then injected into Purview.
Okay.
Right. So that's where you will see that we need a lot of memory because it's doing quite a few things. And then we are not ingesting any data. That is, we are looking, we are taking a peek at the tables that we are scanning on SAP, but we're not ingesting the data as is. We are processing it and we are only ingesting the metadata information back into Purview.
Okay. So, and this screen is probably also interesting. Yeah. So
yeah.
Purview has this, or you go ahead with this, channel.
No, I was just agreeing with you. So we do have a lot of connectors. Some of them are in preview. As you can see, the Amazon RDS for PostgreSQL is in preview. So likewise, there are a few connectors which are preview, and more connectors are being added. Few of them probably in private preview, but there are quite a few of them that are generally available. And maybe you can type, when you filter on the SAP side of things, you have 4 of these connectors. Maybe Martin, you're better placed than me to talk about these.
We saw the announcement that Holger shared at the beginning for BW and the HANA database. Those were mentioned because they are the new public preview connectors. But the ones that are like generally available today are the typical ECC one and the S4HANA one, which we're looking at in more detail today. Yeah. So and those are the typical SAP workloads, that we see with customers. So.
Right. So no, those are the existing connectors for SAP, and like we showed earlier in the previous screen, we would use these connectors to create a registration first, and once we have done the registration, we then set up a scan, and these scans can either be incremental or full scans, and also you can set up these scans to be automatic or manual as well.
So I clicked on this specific system, where we have the configuration and the existing scans. And you can see then there's the collection path, and it always shows us that my first scan was quite extensive. So I did no filtering at all. So I just discovered everything that the connector can ingest, yeah, which then resulted in 1.5 or 1.4 million assets from that particular SAP system. So when we look here, this is the scan that I triggered at that time.
And if you click on the run ID, maybe you will also see the details.
Yeah, but I actually saw that I wanted to show the other one, this one, okay, the latest one. So the system showed a couple of fewer items, but it's also a different release date. Yeah, so this one was on S/4HANA 16.10 actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So in here we see assets discovered and assets ingested, and this was actually a complete full scan. When we look at some of the more on the details, we see the scanning took 31 minutes. And the actual processing then and the ingestion.
12 hours, almost 12 hours.
Yeah, so don't expect this to be instantaneously. Yeah, so but very often this is a task that is executed once and only re-executed at a later point in time because your SAP structure doesn't change if you don't upgrade or if you don't add set tables or like custom columns to any of your tables. Yeah? And of course, this is also going to improve over time, yeah, with performance improvements. All right, so this.
So now we have the scan.
Yeah, exactly. So, and where do we want to go next then, Chandra, into the data insights?
So once we have, let's say, complete the story, once we have done the scan, we want to know, obviously, what have we ingested and what is the information we have right now. So for that, let's try and browse the catalog by clicking on the first icon on the left. Then click on source type. Then click the, yep.
There we go.
Yep. Now here you can talk about these items better than me.
So like I said at the beginning, I just took everything, yeah, probably like many customers at the beginning do. So you get a complete structure download, yeah. And so what we call then the SAP metadata. And the modules are then grouped by hierarchy, yeah, which is then meaningful to a person that actually understands the SAP backend, yeah, by the typical modules. For instance, here's the finance part, yeah, where you get then the development packages. But if you actually know what you're looking for, yeah, like I did at the beginning, I said, give me the ACDoc A table, I can already apply the filtering, go directly there without going through the catalog to go there directly. Yeah. Yeah, and if you probably also do a full scan, meaning a full search by using an asterisk in the top blue bar. Remove the ACDoc, okay? Just go with star. Yeah, hit enter. Now you would also see on the left hand side that you can filter based on the object types. And if you scroll down on the left, probably you will also see that you're able to filter down based on the collections, filter based on the labels, filter based on any classifications that have happened, filter based on other items that you generally see, like for example, SME, subject matter expert, or a data owner, which we can all set by enriching the data that has been ingested. So the filtering capabilities are being added as we add more and more filters as we enrich the data that is being ingested. And here, this is a location where you can do a search. And this kind of search is also integrated with another tool like Data Factory and Azure Synapse as well. So if you integrate with, if you have registered Data Factory and Synapse Workspace with Purview, then you can do the same search within those workspaces too. And that is even more easier for a developer for him to find out what he is looking for. Yeah. I think that's amazing. I wasn't aware of that, Chandra. So since we have the Data Factory connected here, I can do my search from there as well, yeah?
Yes, if you open up a data factory, or if you open up the data factory specifically.
Okay. So you want me to do that, but then I need to navigate a little here.
I can take you there. Go to ADF.
So maybe I have it still here. No, that's Purview. Is it factory?
So that would be. Yeah.
So now in this search here, I can do the same. Here it already says Purview.
Purview.
Yes. So you can search the catalog right from here.
Now we get the results as we would expect in Purview search. Very cool.
Okay.
Oh, this is cool.
Then you can right click that asset.
And I get the same screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So basically it is quite integrated. In fact, if it was a CSV file or if it was a Parquet file, you would be able to right click that CSV or a Parquet file and say add it to a data flow. If it was a Synapse, then you can say query that CSV file. So those are features that are available just right out of the box. We just need to integrate these two together. So that's another nice feature as when it comes to a developer trying to find out what he is looking for. Now back to Purview again. So we can then we have done the ingestion, we have done the search, we have done the class. I mean, we have seen how to look for the assets. We can then look at the details. Yeah, for example, here we have we know the description, we know where the data is coming from, we know what type of data it is. And if you click on schema, you would probably also see the fields for that particular table. Right, and these can be edited. I mean, you can enrich this further. For example, you see the second column after the fields, you have classifications. So you can right now we are not able to classify based on whatever information we have ingested, but we can manually also classify that. And so Martin, do you see the edit pencil just above? Yeah. So a given asset can be enriched, and this is what I was talking about data curation. As a data analyst or as a data curation specialist, I can then enrich this metadata that has been ingested, and that not only helps me in finding out or in filtering out the data that I'm looking for, but it also helps in enriching the entire catalog. So we have about close to 200 classifications, out of the box classifications that are available. So we can associate this particular column to a particular classification which it may be relevant to. And likewise, we can also create your own custom classifications, right? So if there are some IDs or if there are some specific country specific IDs or whatever they are, maybe even business specific items that you would want to create and classify items, then you can create your own custom classification and they'll start showing up in this dropdown. I'm not going to go too deep into how to create those custom classifications, but it's good to know that it's possible. And those are what we call as the column level and technical and out of the box classifications. Likewise, we also have glossary terms on the next column where you can create business relevant items. For example, this column RCLNT doesn't make any sense to a business user, right? So if that means maybe client ID, for example, I'm just making things up as I'm talking, then you can create a glossary term that is called client ID. And then a business analyst obviously doesn't know about RCLNT. He would simply say client ID, and this RCLNT or this particular asset will show up in the result. So that's how you enrich your data. These are a couple of ways of doing it. There are other ways as well. And then if you look at the contacts on the top tab, Martin. Yeah, this is where I was talking about, assigning an expert or assigning a SME or an owner for a given data asset. Here you can assign yourself as.
Nice.
It will search the Active Directory. And in my case, if you want to add me as that user, then you want to search by my alias, maybe it would be easier. So search for S. Chandra probably.
But that's really cool. So if I'm then searching for if I'm currently working with the AC Docker A table, and I have a question, then I'm not lost because I would find your name. You are the expert for this, and I could ping you and ask you all the questions, and you could help me out.
You know
that's
who to
actually
ask.
Pretty cool. That's actually pretty cool because I think in a lot of cases you have the expert who is doing working on the visualization and stuff like that, and he doesn't really know, or she doesn't really know the technical details or whatever. And here there's a way to find your name, get in contact with you, and then get the answers that I might have.
And if you click on save, Martin.
And then, I didn't add Holger yet, since he's attending the session today. He will be next on the list.
We'll make him the owner.
No. Put Robert there.
For a complete organization, make Holger owner. One question till we are waiting. Of course, we are collecting the schema. So we are collecting the description of our data on the source. And which kind of permission we need to have to be able to collect that? Do we need to have some kind of special permission on SAP systems for that, or?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And we can have a look at the docs entry for this. So it's Microsoft. So this is the ECC now. It also tells you what the capabilities are at the moment. Okay. The prerequisites that we talked about, what the VM that runs the scan requires. There's the RAM that we spoke about, the JCO driver, and here you see the permissions you require to execute the RFC function module. We'll see a little later.
Okay.
Yeah, so those two.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Yeah, now back into the portal, and if you do a search catalog and look for everything, typing a star. And now if you scroll down left, you will now see you can filter based on the contact.
Cool.
So the more you enrich, the more filters
will happen.
The more better your your search will be. Okay, so that was on the on how you can enrich your data. Now let's click back on AC Docker, Martin. And now let's look at the lineage. You could probably talk a little.
Yeah, so since this is a table, and the way the ingestion discovers the structure in SAP, it already tells us what are the primary and what are the foreign keys. And based on the foreign key relationships, it can show up to us the actual relationships. And you see in here, this particular table has 50 plus views associated with it. So this particular, and you can start filtering by columns if you like, and start understanding the structure of this.
The idea is, the idea is here, once you select that particular column, you will see which view is being used further in the downstream process. And so there are a couple of things that you can find out. Number one, if I'm querying the FG, LV, BCF, PRFY view, then using this lineage, I know where the data is coming from. And I will try and find out, well, is this the correct data I'm looking for? So that way I can qualify if I'm looking at the right data set, number one. Number two is if somebody modifies the AC Docker table, and of course, on a SAP system, it's probably not going to happen. But if it is a regular SQL table, and if the developer is going to change that particular column to something else, then he knows downstream what are the other views that are going to be impacted.
Yep.
Right. So those are things that we get out of Lineage and the key, let's say, use cases where Lineage is very, very useful. And this Lineage, as you can see, is automatically grabbed Lineage. We did not do anything specific in order to create this type of create this particular view that we are seeing here. But then there are other lineages which probably need to be created and ingested by tools like Data Factory or Synapse pipelines. And for instance, let's say we have created a particular workflow wherein data from AC.K is flowing into a data lake, and then from that data lake it is flowing into a Power BI data set, and for Power BI data set it is going into a report and then into a dashboard. So this particular piece of Lineage is made of two different, let's say, pieces. One is data coming from SAP into the data lake, and the other piece of Lineage is the data that is being extracted into a Power BI report and then being finally shown into a dashboard. So
just to highlight, yes, sorry, because I think that's where we started, right? So I have the Power BI dashboard, and Martin showed this beautiful Power BI dashboard with some charts and data, and now this is basically the whole way that the data did to finally arrive in this dashboard. So maybe there were some simple data extraction, then maybe there was an additional transformation process, maybe it was joined with some other data source and stuff like that. And then in the end, I see the information in Power BI. And what we see here is basically the whole way that a specific dashboard, a specific screen that I see in Power BI took to finally get there.
Yes, that's more or less the end-to-end lineage.
Nice, yeah.
So what we have done.
Which coming back to the trust issue that Martin raised in the very beginning, this clearly now tells me I don't need to guess where the data is coming from. I can clearly see, okay, this data comes from this system and that system and this system, and maybe was combined, merged, joined. And so now I have really this clarity and I can trust the data again.
Yes. And this is a simple example. Like John and I made an easy first step, which is easy to comprehend. But of course, this will look very different in the productive scenario with multiple inputs and other transformations until it actually lands there to give you a complete set.
And one more thing to note here is that we are looking at a good case scenario where there are no errors. So, for example, this dashboard is now trustworthy because there are no problems in the other transformations that we are seeing. But for example, if there was a problem, if a guy that was looking at the dashboard thinks that, oh, this data doesn't seem right, then he can come back here and see, for example, maybe the copy activity that happened from AC.K into the CSV file failed maybe yesterday night. And that is probably why we are now seeing an error in the dashboard. And so he can go back to that ADF admin and say, hey, can you look at what happened in yesterday's run of the pipeline? So that way he will be able to easily identify, we call it as the root cause analysis, identify the root cause of the problem and fix it from a quicker way rather than trying to figure out where the data went missing. And so just to finalize or rather continue further on this particular lineage aspect, I was just going to say that there were two pieces that I was talking about. One is data coming through the ADF and the other one lineage coming from the Power BI. So we have done a quick let's say combination of these two separate lineages to make them look like one. And in order to do that, we had to take some help of the Atlas API. And another thing I would probably also find it worth mentioning here is that the entire Purview platform is built on top of open source Apache Atlas. And so whatever we can do with Apache Atlas APIs can be done using Microsoft Purview 2 once again. So I'm going to quickly grab your screen, Martin, just to show quickly a Postman screen where I can show how basically I'm connecting to Purview using Postman. So I'm guessing you can see my screen now.
There it is, yeah.
Right. So what you can see here is I have a Postman where I'm going to make a post request to the Purview to the Microsoft Azure, and then click get a token from there. And after that, I'm going to make a GET request to the Purview account that I have. And basically, I'm saying that get me all the type definitions that are available in the existing Purview account that I have. And once I click on the send, it will go back to the Purview and then fetch back all the type definitions that are available. It's probably take a few seconds to beautify this one. But then the idea is, yes, we can use the Purview APIs. And if you look at the, yeah, that's the output. And if you look at the body, obviously this one doesn't have any. For example, if I were to create a collection like the one I showed you, then I can, pass some parameters like this in the body in order to create collections. So I have a few examples for creating or deleting a collection or creating credentials and so on. So most of the things that you can do using the UI can be achieved using the APIs as well. So
I think that's very powerful for Purview. Yeah. So we get you things out of the box, pre-curated and like templated. But like with many Microsoft products, you're also getting the choice of interacting if you're like a power user with our APIs directly. Yeah. And then in this case, we were like leveraging what was there for SAP already, but we wanted a little different representation, yeah, of this nice flow that we saw there from S4 to Power BI, to curate it in a certain way so that it supports our narrative. Yeah? And this is like how we customized the final mile, so to say. Yeah?
Do you want to take the screen back and show how we did the customization?
So in here, the copy part, Data Factory, gets us Lineage automatically because we registered the tenant. Yeah, that's why what we saw before when we were reusing the search, yeah, also from Data Factory. And on this side, the Power BI tenant is also registered. Yeah, so this was also like done manually. But in here we needed a small link, yeah, so that we could actually show it like this in the current stage that Purview is in, yeah, with the out-of-the-box functionalities.
Yeah, so that's where the APIs came to our help, and of course, not only the APIs, there are also a couple of packages that a couple of our colleagues have created. And William, he's the one that has created the Apache Atlas API. And another colleague of ours, Frank, he has created and provided us with a small sample code, which uses the Apache Atlas API in order to do the stitching of these two together. So we have used the sample code provided in that for creating this final output.
But that's actually pretty cool because that means so Microsoft Purview has obviously a huge set of tools already, but it's also very open. So it provides all the relevant APIs that you can, like what you've shown in this specific case, enhance and yeah, build even additional visualizations, so to say, which I think is fairly powerful, that Purview is also extendable in such a way.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah.
What we are seeing only is we are basically scratching the surface. There are lots of things that we can do using the API.
So, and we want to finish with a quick look at the ABAP code, yeah, that is executed on the function module. Let's go actually do the scanning here. So let me move over to my SAP system. So in here, you see the function module, which is actually being called via the integration runtime from Purview. And in here, you see there's a couple of, like the program runs through a sequence of things. And given a certain filter, yeah, for each area, it will collect information and then store it on the in the storage location, yeah, for the integration runtime. And some of them are required, yeah, and some of them are optional, yeah. And you will see in the system that I already commented a couple of things, yeah, because I said, well, we are not interested in the indexes, and also we are not interested in the view conditions, yeah. So you can already reduce the amount of things you are actually ingesting by interacting with the ABAP code. Yeah. I believe that has already been put as a like improvement item, how it has been asked to offer that functionality on the Purview UI. But today, as of today, you can already interact with the ABAP code here and influence the outputs that go into Purview.
So, but this means in order to use the ABAP connection, I need to install this Z code basically. Then obviously I as a customer have full control, with all the ABAP stuff on an SAP system. I can really read through the code and again exactly see what we are doing in this specific case. But this is the function module that is called then by the integration runtime from Purview to collect the relevant data.
Exactly.
You know what we might do and talk to the colleagues whether we should not put this on ABAP Git so that customers can install this via ABAP Git directly in the SAP system.
That's a good point, Holger, because today it's hosted on an official storage from Microsoft. That would be great feedback, great addition.
So on Purview side, I have seen that so that you have the list of different objects like story procedure tables and everything else. Is this predefined, or you can also put your custom objects there and then map with your Z function these custom objects and say, hey, you know, SAP system, exactly that. So is this fixed, or you can introduce your own object types?
The filters are more or less fixed, but you can also filter on the top. If you look at Martin, if you click on the source type, here, this is not fixed. It depends on what are the sources we are scanning.
Yeah, okay.
And here, that's a good question, Robert. If we would think about object types that are more SAP specific, because these are trying to be agnostic, right, across all sources, which are also non-SAP.
Can you select on the above? Can you select a SAP source?
You mean you will have another? Okay.
It hasn't changed.
Okay.
I was just making sure if that would change, but probably not. But that's a good thought. Maybe good piece of feedback for the PG.
Because I mean, you have such a big freedom to define on a source system what you want to expose to the Purview. So, and I probably think that you can define any kind of object types. Yeah. So probably then you can somehow filter based on those custom object types. Yeah? Maybe, I don't know.
No, it's a good thought. This is mostly for elements that we know within Microsoft type of services. But it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, and the product is going to evolve. Yeah, so this is the beginning of the journey. Yeah, so first video session on the channel today, and much more to come.
So, dear customer, if you want to understand the SAP structure, please use Microsoft Purview, and then you will see. But it's interesting, you can, I mean, it's very powerful. You can really combine different structures from different sources and simplify your life a lot.
Yeah, and the vision, after that, once you have the knowledge about how the relationships are, you can then also infuse this for like post-processing. One of the easy examples is having a clever copy job on the data factory or in a pipeline that already knows much more about what you're actually pulling. So there's already quite P-Time, for instance, P-Time Stranghold is quite active in that space. And also writing interesting blogs that would be worth adding to the description of the video afterwards.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Send me some links. I'll put them in the description.
Very interesting topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as you said, Martin, we are just getting started. So I think I'm pretty sure we will see both of you, Chandra, Martin, again with more sophisticated. Maybe actually, I mean, you said that the lineage that you have shown us was a very, very simple one. Maybe in one of our next shows we can build on that and make it a little more complicated and talk about the different ETL joining transformation processes that we can also then visualize there in Purview.
We need to create a small story around that. Maybe which tables do we want to join, and finally end it up in a Power BI report. Right now, we probably are having a rudimentary type of example, but we can explain. Yeah.
Which is good. I think it's always good to start with a simple example, and then we can build on that. So, but just for an outlook for future episodes, I would say.
And by then, who knows? Maybe we don't need to stitch that lineage. It is automatically out of the box.
Yeah, let's see.
Good.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for both of you for joining and giving us this first glimpse at Purview. As said, I'm sure we'll see you again. And till then, thanks for joining, and see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.